All right, once again, we are happy to be joined by former U.S. men's national team star Eric Wynalda, talk about some of the non-betting stuff going on around the world of football, the beautiful game. Eric, let's start with Weston McKennie. His move to Leeds looks imminent. I guess the best question I want to ask is how should American soccer fans feel about I feel like we see every once in a while these English Premier League teams start to like double dip into American players and start to kind of galvanize the USMNT fan base around them. So now they got Marsh, they got Aronson, they got Tyler Adams. What does that say, like, kind of about the direction that Jesse Marsh is taking this club, and how would you say that American soccer fans should feel? Because I mean, I think it's cool, but I mean, I'm not a Leeds fan. I'm an Everton fan, and I remember with like when Brian McBride and then Donovan and then Tim Howard, and it was a point of pride, but at the same time, it's like it is a little peculiar.
Well, yeah, this feels like Fulham all over again, right? Because it's
Right?
both
Yeah.
and that gang. But a couple of things. I mean, you can blame this all on Harrison. Harrison was the first one to go to Leeds, came from MLS, NYCFC, and convinced them that you could come from America and be a great contributor because he had a great year last year for the club. And the realities of Tyler Adams in his inclusion in this team, Aronson was way overpriced in my opinion, 30 million for that. Great that it's a big number, but it also brings some added pressure he wasn't ready for. And he's starting to his form is starting to falter a little bit. It does cause an issue, man. I mean, let's face it. This is an American coach who's now bringing in another American player and an American coach with Chris Armas. As long as he can get the work permit, he will be the. And remember him? He was brought in by Ralph Rangnick, who is also Rangnick was the guy that was a part of Red Bull that it's championed Jesse Marsh in the first place. So it's all kind of connected. But all things being equal, the bottom line is this the best move for Weston McKennie? And the answer is probably no. I don't know what will happen in the end of the day. We just saw, a player get hijacked who's all signed up to go to Everton, ended up at Tottenham. And this is happening. These are odd times and crucial moments in the last 6 days of a transfer window. Who knows what might end up happening? The offer is 28 million. That's what Leeds is saying that they're willing to pay for Weston McKennie, which is a good number. It's a fair number. And with Juventus's problems right now, they actually have multiple players who are now being accused of falsely registering what their salaries are. So they're looking at another investigation on top of the 15 points they just lost. So they're looking to get a not jump ship, but get a couple of guys to walk the plank and try and get some money out of them. 28 is a fair offer. Juventus is asking for 35. So that's the only sticking point right now. The bottom line is we're 2 or 3 days away from Arsenal saying, we'll take him. We'll give you 40. We lost Mudryk anyway. We were willing to give up 60, 70, and we lost him. So maybe we'll jump into that. So this thing could take another turn. That's what people need to understand. The concerning part for me, and being a guy that played in Europe and got relegated, I broke my leg and watched my team get relegated, which was horrible. But this would be a horrible story, guys, if 3 Americans are a part of a team that goes down. That's the only concern I have. I know you guys don't think that that's a realistic possibility, but this is football. Anything can happen. And I'm concerned about that component of it. Jesse Marsh is a very man, he's the kind of manager. He's a friend. I played with him. We played together in Chicago. We talk not regularly anymore, but we used to. He's got great ideas. He turned down Everton for this, so you got to keep that in mind. He's a guy that's not afraid to go for it. He's not afraid to walk right into that fire. So that's a pretty risky scenario, and the risk reward of all of this is pretty clear. I think they stay in. I think Weston, if they get it done in the next 24 to 48 hours, is going to be playing for Leeds. If they don't, there's going to be a couple of other places. Remember, he originally said no to Unai Emery at Aston Villa, but when he said no, that was 12 points ago. Aston Villa is in a completely different scenario, and who knows what kind of pitch is coming Weston McKennie's agent's way after this really good run from Unai Emery's team. So Aston Villa might be a destination. Arsenal still might be a destination, but Leeds is the forefront.
What does the fit look like? I mean, they already have Rocca and Adams. Aronson fits into that midfield a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit crowded. Is he getting, like, do you see him getting first team minutes? How regularly?
Yeah,
I think that's the
do. I
question.
don't think they don't like Roca. I mean, you watch his mannerisms, especially when he comes off the bench. He's a little volatile. He does give the ball away a lot. Watch him in 60, 70, 80-minute mark. He has to get subbed because he's still trying to make the same pass and they're reading it. These are the kind of principles that Jesse Marsh is going to get angry about. But the good thing about about Weston, to answer your question, is he's been playing wingback recently for Juventus, and he's shown me something I didn't know he had in his toolbox. Is that's to get to the line at speed and hit somebody in the eyebrow. That's something I didn't know that he had the capability of doing. So the versatility of Weston McKennie might be another pitch point.
Gio Reyna obviously too has been on fire, coming out of the World Cup break, 2 game-winning goals against Augsburg and then today against Mainz. Obviously, he is one of the United States' best talents that we have. And obviously, the whole saga has gone on and everything like that. But what I'm more interested in is that, is Gio going to stay at Dortmund potentially long-term? And if he does potentially go somewhere, and this is kind of a 2-part question, because now with Pulisic looking like he's not going to get very much minutes for Chelsea, is there a possibility that Leeds just turns it into Team USA and they just bring all the Americans over and see if we can win the Premier League that way?
It's contingent on one thing: if Jesse Marsh keeps his job. I mean, there's a lot to learn for Jesse in this realm. I watched him really struggle with some of the cultural differences that exist in Germany, because he missed the mark a bunch of times on that deal. And there was a couple of them where I sent a message over to him: don't do that. Germans can't. And there's a couple of things like that that I would say exists in England as well. I mean, look, Pulisic is probably going to AC Milan. I think that's one piece of it. Going back to Gio, though, how do you think this all started? They had a huge deal on the table for him to move to a massive club, and when he didn't play, that deal was off. Now, you started this conversation, unfortunately, with obviously he's one of the best players in our country. Well, it's not that obvious to Greg Berhalter, who wants him to play a system, who chose a guy in Tim Weah over him multiple times, who's now playing left back for his club in France. Let's just think about that for a second. I mean, the reality is that if maybe we had better players and Tim Weah was our left back and Weston McKennie was our right back, because I haven't been impressed with Dest at all, and we could have seen a very different midfield and a very different forward line. These are all choices that Greg Berhalter made, but they certainly dictated the conversation when it came to Gio Reyna's next destination. It was a big one. I do know that for a fact. And when it didn't happen, that's where all this disappointment is coming from. He was going to make a big move. It was going to be 70, 80 million. And it just didn't happen. Now, his response to that, and the 2 fingers in the ears and the Memphis Depay, that's a direct shot at Greg Berhalter for saying we don't have a Memphis Depay right now scoring goals in the Champions League. And that is, if you didn't know, Memphis Depay's signature celebration that I can't hear you. All of this is a mess. I mean, what happened is terrible, and it's obscene and ludicrous and really amateur. But it's really unfortunate that Gio's in the middle of that. The one thing I would add is, how about that for a response? Are you kidding me? To come into those scenarios on everybody has had something to say about this. I read an article this morning in the LA Times from a guy named Kevin Baxter. Sorry, Kevin, you know nothing about football or sports. Don't ever do that again. You're embarrassing yourself. But there's people taking shots at this kid left and right. And you have Jude Bellingham texting out, love for number 7. This more than anything has proven that yes, Gio Reyna could handle it. Yes, he had every right to be pissed off that he wasn't in the team. Yes, Greg Berhalter got it wrong, and he should have never lied about the status of the player in the first place. And it just illuminates the fact that we had a manager who could not handle a player of his caliber and a player of his ego. And here's the last part to that. Don't we want guys to have a big ego? What do we want everybody to just say yes sir and go out there and be a robot? No, that's why he's a good player. That's why he's flourishing in Germany, is because they let him play. And by the way, they also explained to him before the game, you're not going to start today, and here's why. That it's pretty simple, guys. It's not you're not in my plans, so just behave. Or okay, here's what we're going to do. I think this is a really good game for you. Come in at the end, get us a goal. There's a big difference between those two conversations, and there's a respect issue that certainly no longer exists when we're talking about Greg Berhalter. So I am so just blown away by his response and his ability to come up big for his club in two very crucial moments. Those are 4 points that they needed. They were vital. I mean, Freiburg has dropped from 2 to 6, and Dortmund has passed them now, and now it's time to beat Leverkusen and be real again. And they're not in that position without a 20-year-old kid that America doesn't value. So I think that at some point his play at Dortmund will dictate an $80 million transfer somewhere. And that'll be right along the lines of Jadon Sancho, Dembele, Erling Haaland, and everybody else that's come out of Dortmund over the last couple of years, because they do the business of football better than anybody.
All right, let's shift gears from that soap opera to a team that probably does the business of football worse than anybody at the moment. That's Everton, and we'll look at the relegation battle right now in the Premier League. Bournemouth at Bet365, our wonderful sponsors, are -334 favorites to go down, but Everton and Southampton are both odds on, -163 each, and then Wolves, Nottingham Forest, Leicester, and Leeds all between +240 and +350. My question is surrounding Everton. I hate Everton. I'm an Everton fan, but I hate them. And when a club is like this, I don't know how much experience you talked about going down when you were in Germany, but when a club is circling the drain like this, and it's just an absolute, I think Andy Hunter in The Guardian called it a civil war, and I think that's pretty apt. As a player, like, what do you do? Like how can you? It's one thing to say drown out the noise, but it seems impossible when it gets like this.
Well, look, I managed a team here in Las Vegas, and I had a horrible owner, and my idea of the way that football club should be run was very different than his, and there was just a constant bashing of heads when it came to that stuff. And then the manager, the reason why Frank, before he was let go, was so beloved is because he protected his players from that. And then he eventually had one row with one guy because it got out of control. And then that was the reasoning behind letting him go. The one thing that stayed consistent, though, guys, whether it's Rafa Benitez, whether it's Ancelotti, I'll go all the way back to Silva, or even Martinez. I mean, it has been the consistent component of every time this team starts to figure itself out in the post-Moyes era. They just can't communicate, and that's a reflection of ownership. That's a reflection of hiring the wrong people who manage the right people sometimes. So we're seeing this right now with Levy at Tottenham. Tottenham has got a problem, and as long as Levy is there, they're going to continue to have a problem because they just can't get over themselves. Everton's has a similar issue. They are circling the drain. I do think they go down. And the main reason is because, and if they make a couple of moves and they try to cash in, they're going to need some really smart people to get some undervalued players who are hungry to keep them in. But that usually doesn't work. And you can't put all your money into one guy. So it just looks bad. But this is on the management more than anything else. I feel bad for Frank because that's two shots. Kind of thrown out of Chelsea and now thrown out of Everton, and I really don't think in this occasion this was his fault.
That kind of transitions to the question I had, which was, we saw Gerrard get the job at Villa, and that didn't go particularly well, and now they're playing better under Emery. We saw Lampard seem to improve Everton, but things have devolved around him. What about those two guys, being high profile players like they were, hasn't translated that well to coaching? Do you think that's part of it? And what about a player makes a good coach? You've done both. Like, what is your experience there and what you look for?
Well, I tell everybody I was a lousy player. That's why I'm a good coach, right? So the truth of that is it comes down to the person and your ability to communicate with people. That's all. I mean, if you don't have the ability to connect and communicate, and I witnessed Steven Gerrard here, as beautiful as a player he was. He was god awful in LA. He was miserable, and it was terrible to be around that situation. Of course, they were. As being a legend out of Liverpool and being what he was able to bring to that team as a leader on the field, he's just not good at all at galvanizing a team or getting people on board. It's not even about tactics anymore. It's just about the reality of who he is and his inability to calm people down. They all just stiffen up around him, and that's a problem. It's a problem. I mean, you can say whatever you want about guys like Jose Mourinho or Ancelotti, but they have a way about them that allows the player to just go out there and do their thing. And Ancelotti was a great player. He really was. Jose Mourinho sucked. I played against Klopp. He was terrible at Mainz. He taught me how to eat a pretzel, but that's about all I got out of him. But he is a guy that you want to play for. You have to ask yourself that. And some guys have it and some guys don't. It doesn't always mean that if you're a great player that equates to a great knowledge in a managerial role. It doesn't always work that way.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you again for your time tonight and your insight.
I got a 14-year-old, man. My son turned 14. He's it's really cool. He's good. He's good. I keep running into this whole Reyna problem though. Everybody just keeps making jokes about it because wondering what kind of soccer dad I am. So I've got I stay out of it. I let him do his thing, but it's his birthday. I'm gonna go buy him a steak and see if we can put some more hair on I was gonna say chest, but it's probably pretty much his armpits. So
well, enjoy that, and thanks for joining us here on Wonderful, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network.
You got it, guys. Thanks.